You're listening to Nurture Your Zest. I'm your host, Ashleigh King, and I will introduce you to a wealth of interesting, fascinating individuals from all walks of life who will share their stories, how they've overcome challenges, and you will find out their top tips for success. Through this podcast, you can gain tips to grow and change your life and the way you see the world, and help you to nurture your zest. Hello everyone, my name's Ash and I'm delighted to introduce you to James Rutherford. James, would you like to tell us about yourself?
Sure. So I've been in Newcastle for about 20 years. I'm part of the startup scene here. I do a couple of things, one of which is I call myself a bootstrap CTO, so somebody who has an idea can come to me and I'll help them work out what the technical side of that might be and help them build it. And the other thing I do is I've got a product called Kick Cards, which is to help startups be better.
Sounds great. And I know I'm a big fan of Kick Cards. They've really helped me in my own work, starting my own business, but also with mentoring and leading coaching situations. I found them really useful for stimulating discussions. You've reminded me that I need to introduce my MBA colleagues to them because they're a really useful tool.
Oh, fabulous, yeah.
So how did you come up with the idea of Kick Cards? And can you tell listeners what they are?
Yes. So they're a deck of cards that have a bunch of discussions in that help entrepreneurs find maybe risks or opportunities. The idea is that for me, I started a business. I ran it for a few years. It was only when I closed the business that I could kind of see the stuff I should have done with it. There's when you make something, when you put all your energy into something, it becomes quite difficult to see other things. So I closed the business, started to see loads of different things, designed a set of cards that would help other people discover those themselves. So they're guided discussions. Each one should take about 15 minutes. You sit people around the table, or you can do them as your own as a solo entrepreneur. Just take one on the bus and read it in the morning. And they just help you see new stuff.
I like that. Okay, so do you have a favourite Kick Card?
Do I have a favourite? I very much like... There are two that I very much like for different reasons. One is called Magic Hire. It's the one I usually explain to people. It essentially says if you could hire one person tomorrow, what would they do for you? What would they make different? And it's not actually about hiring someone. It just gets very quickly into what do you need to solve right now. And the reason why I like it is because I've developed these alongside an accelerator program. So I've talked to lots of teams, and that card you find that if you sit 2 people, 3 people, 4 people around a table, you ask them a question. You've got a technical person, maybe a marketing person. They both have different answers to that question, but they've never actually spoken it out to each other. And that's absolutely essential, that within the business you should know what everybody's immediate concerns are. So I love the way that just surfaces that sort of thing very, very easily, and in a gentle way, in a formal way. The other one I like a lot is it's about competitors, and it asks you what your competitor does well. Now, what most people do when they think about the competitors, they sort of revert to, we're better than them because that's just the first thing that comes in your head. You have this automatic response to that question. But this one encourages you to think about what your competitors do well. It's quite a hard thing to do. And if you can do that, then you can start to align yourself with that and bring ideas. That's the risks and opportunities thing.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because when you talk about competitors, I can understand what you mean there. In that people might get quite defensive. You know, our unique selling point is XYZ, and it makes me think of some journals I've been reading, mainly because I'm studying again. I'm doing my MBA. And if you've heard of Michael Porter before and Porter's 5 Forces, competitive advantage, I don't know if you've ever come across that management theory. Okay, well, it's taught in every business school around the world. Michael Porter's a writer for Harvard Business Review. He's very long established, but it's really interesting because one of the things he said in the past is that partnership does not help you gain competitive advantage, which is something I really disagree with. And I find that quite surprising that anyone would say that, because my whole ethos and kind of mantra is around collaboration, not competition. And I think definitely in Newcastle, all of us in the startup scene and in that kind of ecosystem are all very supportive of each other's projects.
Yeah, definitely so. So is that partnership between two people in the same business, or is that partnership between different businesses?
Sorry, I should have been clear on that. He actually means with your competitors. So, I mean, if you look at something that's really relevant to the current news, if you look at McDonald's and Burger King, and they recently partnered up on a campaign that was interesting, because you wouldn't expect two big companies that are really each other's rivals to partner up in that way for a marketing, campaign. So I guess it would be interesting to know your thoughts on that, as someone who's gone into so many businesses or run your own businesses and worked with so many people in accelerator programs. In the sense, what do you think about the importance of partnership or not, collaborating?
Oh, definitely very powerful. So when I first came, shortly after I first came to Newcastle, there were a few techie meetups that started, and my expectation was that you'd kind of go along to these things and everybody would have their own little corner and they wouldn't want to talk or share anything. But actually that's not been the case at all. Everybody's very, very welcoming. One of the things that I do is to work for agencies sometimes. So somebody might pitch for a large job and then have to fulfill it and not quite have the resources for it, because agency work is just very up and down. So the fact that I'm technical and can sort of do the same thing as them, but I don't go in competition with them, I just come in and be part of their support team, is very, very powerful for everybody.
That's true. I'm glad you've shared that, because, I do think maybe it's just a Geordie thing. We're so friendly up here, but I definitely think we all work together a lot in the Northeast.
Just in the news recently, there's Dyson's electric car. Which is they've just decided to shut down operation on. But one of the things about the electric car industry is that there's a lot of different things that need to be solved, and there is an economy of patenting things and then sharing that technology. So even at that large scale, a car manufacturer doesn't necessarily make all the car themselves. They share with competitors via patent arrangements.
That's true. Yeah, thank you for sharing that example. So can you tell me about the local accelerator programs you've been involved in? Which ones have you done? How many? Do you have a favourite?
For sure. So I've been on 2 accelerator programs myself. I've been quite close to a third one. So I started on a program called the Difference Engine, which was in 2011. A very interesting program, because I think it's one of the first of its kind in the UK. I went on the second cohort, the second year, and they essentially took 10 teams, took us away into a building. We were there 3 months. They brought in lots of external mentors, which was also part of the drive behind Kick Cards. It's like getting an external influence into what you're doing. So we had that was quite hardcore. We're building something specific 3 months, and a very directed program to do that. Hugely enjoyable. Taught me a lot about startups. Taught me a lot about having to build things. Introduced me to a lot of great people. That sort of spiritually became Ignite, which was running in Newcastle as a full-time program for I think 5 or 6 years. It's recently had funding, and it's now back in the region, which is fantastic. And they do the same sort of thing. They take on 10, 20 teams of various stages, but over the years they've tended to be later stage. And you see all sorts of really strange dynamics in them. So a team, usually out of the 20 teams, there's perhaps a couple don't make it through at all to the end of the program. 2 of the teams might split up and the people between them move. So the tech person moves on to another team, that sort of thing. You just see some really interesting things happen, and usually get 1 or 2 teams that completely pivot. They change what they're doing completely, and 1 or 2 of those have been very successful. So I love that sort of format. The other program I'm being part of is the one that's run by eSpark in the NatWest Hub. It's now eSpark and NatWest Hub are now separated, so it's a different kind of program now. But that was more about getting started, being enthusiastic. I took the kit cards on there, and it was largely around finding your value proposition, finding your market, doing a business model canvas, that kind of thing. The great thing for me from that program was to meet lots of people who weren't in tech, were starting businesses not in tech. So the cards that I developed with tech teams over the years, I could then understand that the language could be changed a little bit and it would fit somebody who's running a football school or making beer or cake mix or whatever it happened to be. There are all sorts of different businesses, and it's, what they have now in the NatWest program is a very good alumni network, very, very helpful Facebook group, all that sort of stuff.
I've always been curious about accelerators, so I like hearing about it in your words. And I know for me, at some point, I'd love to join one. I don't have the time right now. And I think one of the things that I'm afraid of, or I kind of know would happen, is that it really does force you to look at everything about your business with real, a really big lens. I actually feel like what you were talking about, the team dynamics and that sort of thing, when you're forced into that pressure cooker, it does create all kinds of situations that you weren't expecting. Something we're all experiencing in our MBA at the moment, because we've got lots of group work to do. Just the way we all interact with each other, we all come from different walks of life, different backgrounds, and it's really curious to start seeing those dynamics come out. So I'm really grateful that you share that ideas, and I'm thinking of I love psychology. It would be so interesting to be a fly on the wall and almost like watch those shows. It's kind of like The Apprentice, but without the editing.
Yeah.
So
the pressure cooker thing is definitely there, and actually the strength of those sorts of environments, it forces you to do it, forces you to be there. And if you split up during a 3-month program, or if you find that your idea is not going to fly within that 3-month program, that's better than trying to do it for 2 years and then finding out it's not going to work. Exactly.
And there are a lot of organizations or lots of businesses where people are doing everything themselves, and they don't know some of the great support tools that you would learn in an accelerator program. Just I would imagine from what I've read looking at them is, you get access to various events, to networks, to the alumni network you were talking about, to different groups, to special offers on software you might need, or just being in that hub where you might have access to how big are they, around 20?
The NatWest Hub.
Yeah, or just generally for accelerator
So the incubator programs vary in size, but the Ignite ones and Difference Engine are usually 10 to 20, depending on how many they're supporting. For NatWest, they have, I think it's 4 different stages. As I say, the program's changed since I was on it, but you kind of get people who are entry level, and I think they take on maybe 40 to 50 people there.
Wow.
Maybe that's in 35 teams. And then you have businesses that have up to $1 million or more revenue already, who are kind of further stage in the program. They get more intense.
Wow.
Yeah.
So just thinking about the exposure to those people, of course your business would grow, because if you're trying to do everything on your own with blinkers on, you don't have that outside input and ability to change things. So I can see that would be hugely valuable. You did speak about times where you've started a business and maybe it's failed, or you've seen other businesses fail through accelerator programs, or they've had to pivot. I'm really interested in the concept of fast failure.
Yeah.
I've only just learned about that. I feel like I'm on such a huge growth curve, particularly things around lean startups and all this kind of thing. Yep. Can you tell us a bit about fast failure and how you've seen that happen? What does it mean?
Sure. So essentially what you try to do is to find the market in as quick a way as possible. So as I say, part of what I've set myself out to do is to be a bootstrap CTO. People come to me with ideas and I try and work out for them how that works. Now, That doesn't work for everybody, because sometimes people come with these huge ideas and they say, this is what I want to build. And I'll say, well, that might be where you want to be, but it'll take 3 years, 4 years to build to there. But what you actually want to do is to test that will actually be worth doing. There's no point putting loads of money and loads of effort into something and spending a lot of time doing something that's just not going to hit the market. So if you can shortcut to find out whether somebody will actually buy into the smallest value that you like, what is the thing that you offer, what's the smallest way you can contextualize that value, how can you test that in the market? And if you can, at that point, say, yeah, it looks like we're onto something, or at that point say, well, nobody's interested in this thing that I think that I want to build, then that saves you a lot of time and money and effort. And you see, if you can figure out smart ways of doing that, and I've got a lovely example of this, which I like to share. Is actually somebody who was a mentor on the Difference Energy program years and years ago. Really interesting guy. I won't mention his name, but I don't think he'd have a problem with that, but I'll save that for him. And he was thinking about building an app that was going to help people at an event share photos, so like a music event. And what he did was to print. He was an absolute master of this MVP, they call it, minimal viable product. He printed a load of flyers that said, there's this app that you can use to download your photos and share them. Print a load of flyers, gave them out at a club night. It had a web link on it, and he just tested whether people hit that web link. He'd never built an app. There wasn't an app behind it. He's just seeing whether people would make the effort to click on that link. Is it worth someone's time enough just to find out a bit more? And I think he went to this link and it said, oh, sorry, not built yet, have a free beer sort of thing. But it's just, that to me was perfect, just to gauge someone's interest in something.
That's really made me think about something. You often hear about people waiting till everything's perfect. You know, they think they're going to start their business. I certainly did this myself. You know, okay, I want to start a business. Well, first of all, I should have done all the research about what I wanted to go into. For example, I thought I would just go and make everybody's events look beautiful and I would do wedding planning. But actually, had I done the research at the time and looked at the market and the strategy around that, only 2% of people want a wedding planner in the northeast of England. Yeah. And actually the type of events I would want to do would be quirky, individual, events that are probably not very expensive, but are very personal. So mine would be more around environmentally friendly upcycling things, teaching people how they can design their dream wedding on a shoestring budget. And although that's wonderful to me and it's really personal, there isn't actually a market for that. There's a lot of free Facebook groups and things like that where you can get lots of advice. You might find that the people that are passionate enough about that want to do it themselves. Absolutely, exactly. So had I done that research at the time, I think my business would have been in a different situation than it is today. So I do think there is an important bit about doing your research. But when you were talking there about that fearlessness of just putting a flyer out and seeing who clicks on the link, I think a lot of people would be thinking, well, that might damage my brand if they go to the website and there's nothing there, it's not ready yet. But actually just seeing how many people would click on that is really smart. It is. It's most people think they have to build some techie thing as their minimal viable product if they're building a techie solution. And I think this guy didn't. The flyer this guy had a different name to the service he was going to create as well. So it wasn't like he was burning his brand by doing it. It was just kind of testing a little bit. I think it's brilliant. And it's a really smart. He went to his target audience. He did it in that space. A lot of us start things without considering yet who our demographic is. Who do we serve? So yeah, all of that's really interesting. It's also interesting what you were saying about fast failure, because my idea was a little bit different. My understanding of it was actually more about the way you pick yourself up after failure. Okay. So I think maybe that's because I don't have as much as a tech background as you do. So I've not thought about it in the let's try stuff and get to our market as quick as we can. It's probably two sides of the same thing, because the energy that you put into building something big,
Like the more you put into something, the more you're going to hurt when it fails, and the harder it's going to be to pick yourself up. So spend your time doing little experiments, and it won't hurt so much. Absolutely.
And entrepreneur life can be hard. It does hurt when things go wrong or you don't always get things right. I know my husband actually started a company a while back with his brother, and it was wonderful, and it was ahead of its time. It was featured in Lifehacker, is that the right one? Various different media coverage and things like that, but it didn't work out. And I think now he has so much more insight into what does work and what doesn't. Yeah. So it's been a really valuable process, and actually learning how many businesses do fail, first time businesses.
Yeah, and there are many, many reasons for something to fail, and it's not necessarily anything you've done. It can be the market isn't quite right for it yet. It can be that there's something else out there. It could be that you just don't find your market in time. So I think there are a couple of things. I think one, you should try and test your market in these little ways and try and find it gradually. But also there's something about resilience. There's something about being able to put something in a state where it just chugs along. Because I've heard of quite a few businesses that they've built something, they haven't had the immediate success that they thought they'd have, because nothing does. The overnight successes take many years. But they find they get, for no reason they understand, they get some publicity in, say, Mexico. The app flies off the ground, and it's just nothing they've done. It's just that they've hung in a steady state for long enough to make that happen.
Exactly. Somebody shared a story with me recently. I can't remember who it was. It might have been Paul Lancaster, but I just remember being really shocked that there was a company that kept trying to get things right year on year, and they were just waiting to release and to launch. And eventually it was 16 years had gone by, and by that point there had been so much new technology and improved software that they were left behind. But if they'd just done their idea at the time and just build slowly, rather than, having these huge aspirational goals, but always waiting to launch, just hearing that and feeling that mistake, you can sense how much they would have lost and how much they would grieve for the time that they'd put in and the market share that they would have lost and all Absolutely. Of these different things.
This is the thing about the big ideas. Like, your big idea is fantastic. It's what's going to drive you, but it's probably not the final thing. It's probably not actually what you should build. You might end up building something that's quite close to that, but you have to navigate your way towards it.
Absolutely. So you mentioned MVP before, minimum viable product. And that's so important. And I think lots of people skip that step because they don't think about cash flow. I didn't. And that has been extremely hard for me. It's been a real roller coaster up and down, trying to anticipate when things will be paid. And the effect that has on your mental health can be extraordinary. I'm interested. Let's talk about cash flow. How do you keep your cash flow afloat, or do you have any tips for other people thinking of starting a business or running one?
I suppose I've been kind of a lone operator for quite a long time, let's say 15 years. But over that time, I've taken occasional part-time jobs. What's helped me a lot is to take part-time contracts as well, so or kind of fixed arrangements. So there's one company I was working for 3 days a month for, and it gives me a lot of space to play around the edges. It lets me make something that's different for them, like I can change something for them, but it also gives me a base of cash that if everything else falls through, I've still got something to work from.
I think that's a good point, just having something to keep you steady. A lesson I've learned as well is working for free. A lot of the times when you're a new startup, people don't know who you are. You haven't quite established your credibility yet. So I think it can be beneficial to work for free. But I watched a video on entrepreneurship the other day, and they were saying do that one job for free, not 20. And that was really interesting. Have you ever worked for free?
Have I ever worked for free? I think I probably have. I can't think of an instance. I mean, there's something in working for free in that minimal viable product, because you can test whether somebody wants your service, but it's not actually testing whether they'll pay for it. So working for free might be fine, but it doesn't say that you'll earn money if you try and do it next time, and that's what you want to find out, essentially. And you can also work for too much, and you can work for too cheap. A lot of people tend to work for too cheap. There's a kind of psychological effect where people appreciate things more that are more expensive, just because they're more expensive.
It's true. And actually, when you undersell yourself, you set the expectation for other people in the industry that your price is actually acceptable. So then if you are offering an unrealistic price, it sets all kinds of other domino effects up that you might not expect. But I think the biggest issue or connection I found is actually it undermines your own self-value and the work that you want to put in for that client. You can end up resenting them. Do you find that often with some of the groups you've worked with, where you've been kind of helping them with kick cards and things, that actually the way we think about money can be quite an important issue that limits and holds back startups?
I don't think, other than to say, if you price yourself wrong, then you're onto a massive loser. If you work for free, you can get into a cycle of doing that. It just doesn't help. It doesn't help. So what you should do is look around your market and find the levels, find what competitors are doing. If you're wildly out in the market, if you're pitching really low, that can be very bad as well. So say somebody asks for a quote, they get 5 quotes back. There's yours, which is half everybody else's, which feels really attractive when you're a new business to come and pitch in low. But actually, when somebody gets that in their inbox, it's you're going to look cheap. You're going to look like you're not going to do the same quality job. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so you're obviously very knowledgeable in your area, but also in the wider tech industry, and I'm very interested in all you do. And I'm wondering, how did you get this way? Did you do a lot of research, learning? Do you watch videos online? Do you listen to podcasts? Do you read? What has led to this wealth of knowledge?
Wealth of knowledge. Thank you. I'm going to make myself sound a bit dumb here, but I don't read a lot of books. I tend to read a lot of stuff online. So for years and years and years, I read stuff on Hacker News, which is a tech news aggregator. Now it's a particular flavour. It's not to everybody's tastes. I wouldn't like the discussions there tend to go in a certain direction, but it's really good for surfacing interesting stuff. Podcasts, I've got massively into over the last 2 or 3 years, and there's some really good ones to help you think in different ways. I think people often undervalue play, so that is something I do. I like, and I have because of the way I've structured how I work. I can work part of the month doing paid work and part of the work playing around. So, for example, I might try a new language. I might see on Hacker News or whatever that a particular language is getting some interest. I might spend a bit of time there, decide it's not for me or decide it is for me. And in tech, you kind of have to keep fresh like that. You always have to put a bit of time into trying new things, so that if the next thing does come around the corner and either the thing that you do gets very saturated, or it just becomes the way that people don't do things anymore, you've got something new to focus on. So I think if you play around with new technologies, and if you spend a bit of your time, if you can, just playing generally, drawing stuff or having ideas, writing stuff, whatever does it for you. Because like the worst thing that will happen if you play around is that you'll have had a decent time. You might not have earned any money for it, but you might also learn some skills, and you might have something that you can show people. So I think there's a lot of value in play.
For sure. And when you think about it, some of the best, most innovative ideas probably came through play. it actually sounds to me like playing is what helps you to nurture your zest. So is there anything that you do besides that when you may be feeling down or stuck in either your professional or personal life to kind of pick yourself back up and get you back into the kind of routine of what you're wanting to do?
I think it's just something that I've always done. I don't make a conscious decision to do so. There are times that I felt down from work because of something that's happened maybe with the client. And the important thing is to rationalise why that's happened. Is it because of the people involved? Is it mostly it's circumstantial? Mostly it's not necessarily to do with anything you've done. It's that there's maybe a change of guard at the company you're working for and stuff switches around, and the fact that you're no longer in the place that they want you to be is not your fault. So I think part of it's rationalising it. Part of it is having a good network of people, so having some people to rely on that if things do go wrong, you can either put out a shout and say, I haven't got work at the moment, does anybody know of any? Or you can put out a shout and say, I don't understand this thing, or a feeling this thing's happened, and you'll get some support. And I think winding into that, I'm a big fan of what some people call pay it forward or give first, or however you want to phrase it, which is if somebody needs some help, give your time to them. And that sounds like I'm doing people a massive favour, and I'm kind of arrogant for saying so, but actually it's not. It's really, really enriching to have someone chat to you about what they do, and if you can help them along their journey, that's a fantastic buzz. So if you can surround yourself with that sort of thing, make yourself open, qualify that with if you don't have the expertise to give the answers to someone, make sure they know that. But other than that, it's just great to offer yourself like that. For sure.
And actually learning through sharing is so important, and it's connecting with people and going on the journey together can be really enriching, like you're saying.
Yeah. So what you sometimes find is that you're talking to somebody and you learn a lot from them, a lot more than you thought you would, like a lot more than you give them potentially. So it's
absolutely okay. So we always like to ask about like ethics and environment, things like that. So I'm thinking of a previous guest, my sister actually, Stephanie, who is a girl who codes, but she's just come to coding very late in life. Actually, I say late in life. Sorry, she's only 25 or 26. My bad. So yeah, she's not late in life. What I mean by that is she's tried other career options, but actually she's great at languages, and that's what's got her into coding. She just loves that ability to learn all these languages. So my question is around girls in coding or girls in tech. That, but also other things in the tech sector. The rate and pace of change is just so fast. It's incredible. There's so much innovation going on, but it's also scary in a way. And I just wonder, do you have any thoughts on the tech industry and things like AI or girls in tech or the environment and tech? Climate change, we're using all of this equipment and computer stuff all the time. What are your thoughts around that?
Very, very big questions. I'm not sure I have any more qualification than anybody else to answer anything. It's clear that AI will come and it will displace jobs, and that's very worrying. I was part of a project that was interested in approaching this, and the area we chose was truck driving, because we see that, especially in America, the large interstates, highways will be pretty full of trucks that drive themselves very soon. So you'll have a lot of the people who relied on that sort of job out of a job. Now, how do you cope with that? Huge question. Can you re-educate? Maybe. What do you re-educate to? Who knows? Soft skills, and what does that look like? I mean, it's a really big question. I suppose right at the back of me somewhere, I know that my job also as a technical coder, that's probably going to disappear at some point.
Do you think?
Well, I think so. I think there will be the softer side of it, interfaces, that sort of thing. But for systems that munch on data, already we can train systems that data goes in and something comes out and you're not quite sure what happens in the middle. You just have to train it to give the right answer. So you have this black box in the middle that is essentially the program. So for some kinds of coding, that will take over. I think there's also adaptive code. So again, you have some inputs, you have some outputs. You might start it off with vaguely what that looks like, and the bit in the middle, the program in the middle, will evolve to solve that, if that makes sense. But
yeah.
So I think that there will be big things happening even in industries that people think might be safe. I have no big answer.
Well, that's very interesting, and not knowing much myself about tech and where things might change and go forward, I am very interested in what's going to be happening with AI, how much is changing all the time. There's actually a really interesting TED Talk that I love, and it's about how fast the algorithm's changing, and social media, and how it can be manipulated by the algorithms to make you buy things and actually exploit vulnerable people. I can't remember who does it right now, but it's a really interesting talk. So I'd like to know, what is your one word that gets you out of bed in the morning or gets you through a difficult time, that just keeps you going? Is there anything that helps you to nurture your zest, to get up, to go?
So I think I'd choose play. I think it's a really strong, powerful word. It can apply in many different ways. It can be play as in having fun with things, or it can be play as in trying something you've not tried before. It can be playing with ideas. It can be all that sort of stuff. I might tend towards mischief, the mischief side of play, because I think that's quite intriguing and fun. And I think we're probably going to need a bit more of that as time goes on. Like politically, it's a strange time.
For sure.
Yeah, so play or mischief.
Play is a good one. I like play because I think it's something that I don't imagine anyone else would use. But I also love the word mischief, because I think we all need a bit more mischief in our lives. You know, there is so much going on in politics, as you were saying, and it can be really hard to keep your resilience sometimes with everything going on, climate change, all sorts of stuff, and then our own day-to-day life and you know, whatever. So I think we'll keep play, but definitely we should all keep mischievous. So before we wrap up, how can people find you? Where do you like to hang out online? Would you like anybody to follow you on Twitter or LinkedIn or anything like that? Or do you have a website?
So I have to admit, I'm a bit confused about LinkedIn. I don't understand it as much as I think I should. So I mainly hang out on Twitter. My account is JTRUK, JTruck. My project kit cards, I'd love people to find out more about. So there's, again, on Twitter, it's kit cards. Or if you go to www.kick.cards, and you can find out more there. You can sign up and get 12 weekly cards for free, just in your inbox to see if you like them.
That sounds wonderful. Thanks for sharing where we can find you. Can I twist your arm to give away a free pack of kit cards?
On the spot. Yeah, right.
Okay, wonderful. So what should people do? Should they email you with Nurture Your Zest as a headline and you'll choose somebody, or
well, maybe
what's the easiest way for you?
If they tag me, as in kit cards, and they tag you, and they use the hashtag Nurture Your Zest,
sounds wonderful.
And maybe they should tell us what their word is.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great idea. See, you've given me a kit card yourself there. I really appreciate that. Okay, so listeners will need to tag me and you and Nurture Your Zest and tell us the number one word that gets them out of their bed and helps to nurture their zest for the day.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Sounds good. Thank you, James.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You've been listening to Nurture Your Zest. You can find us online on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Nurture Your Zest. If you've liked today, please subscribe. You can also leave us a review if you're feeling extra kind. Today's podcast has been made available through the kind sponsorship of TL Multimedia and That Branding Company. We look forward to catching up with you again soon as you learn to nurture your zest.